Doctor Who, The Mutants, the 13th story of the Third Doctor, is written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin and starring Jon Pertwee and Katie Manning. I think it's time to wrap up Season 9 as the collection came out. So originally the name of the story was going to be called Independence, then Emergence, and so then renamed as The Mutants, not to be confused with the X-Men. So Bob Baker, Dave Martin and Barry Letts intended for this story to have an anti-racist message. The basis came from Barry Letts, who came up with the idea for Season 4, but it was rejected by Jerry Davis, the script editor. The mines of the Solos were filmed Chislehurst Caves near Bromley and Planet Solos at Blue Water Quarry before it was a shopping centre, and Stonehouse Farm Caves, which was the entrance to Solos Caves. So the opening scene features a bedraggled hermit-like bearded figure played by Sidney Johnson shambling out of the mist towards the camera. Both fans and Jon Pertwee alike have compared the scene to the It's Man at the start of the most episodes of Monty Python's Flying Circus, where the old guy was shouting "Mutt," followed by the Marshal and his henchmen Stubbs and Cotton. After the old man died, the dead Solonian has jagged deformite on his back. The Marshal orders his men to log it, another dead Mutt. The effects on the planet is so good. So the Doctor and Joe in Unit HQ got a message from the Time Lords. As they walked inside the TARDIS, they got transported on Skybase. Solonians have also transported to Skybase for a conference with the Overlords, the planet's colonists from Earth. Varon is furious with the Marshal that Kai has been allowed to go to the conference. The computer calls the Doctor a malfunction. As they held at gunpoint by Marshal, the Doctor tries to explain about the Black Sphere, and it's not for Marshal and his guards, so the Marshal blasted it and then left Stubbs in charge. But after knocking Stubbs out, the Doctor and Joe tried to get inside the conference room with the sphere, but Cotton wouldn't let them in unless you see what's inside the sphere, as you don't want to risk a weapon inside. So after the conference was kicking off, Kai runs off. The Doctor and Joe tries to talk to him, saying the sphere is for him, with the guards chasing them. And there's an intense cliffhanger where Kai grabs Joe and the guards ordered by the Marshal shooting them. Kai and Joe have teleported in Solace transfer section.
No Overlord can exist without a mask.
After they walked out the airlock, Joe is losing her breathing, so eventually Kai managed to knock a guard out, gave her the mask so she can breathe, and took cover in the cave. Meanwhile, the Doctor with Stubbs in Herbarium found Varon, who's grieving over his son, who's been murdered by the Marshal. There's great atmosphere, so the Doctor overlords the Skybase power, causing a power failure. Cotton tells Jaeger that Marshal wanted to see him, so he left, and secretly talks to the Doctor that Stubbs has brought him on their side, and tells him the truth about Joe. It was so funny when Jaeger walked back in, realising that Marshal didn't give the message, and Cotton was like, perhaps he changed his mind. Stubbs tells Varon of the plan to get off the Skybase. Though suspicious, he appears to agree. After overloading the Skybase, the Doctor goes to the transmat and grabs by Varon, mistaking him as Overlord. As they both teleport at Skybase 1 transfer section, the Doctor convinces Varon that he's not an Overlord, and he's there to help Varon's people. So they both go out of the airlock. The Doctor is fine considering he's not an Earthman. There's an intense moment where Kai and Joe are surrounded by the mutants, so eventually Joe ran into the cool looking caves as she passed out, and the guy in the suit, Professor Sondergaard I presume, finds her. The Doctor and Varon met Kai. The sphere finally opens and they reunited with Joe, Grant and Cotton, and Stubbs came by. The Marshal outside the cave with his guards have gassed the cave while Varon returns to his village. It is deserted, save for an elderly Solonian. In the midst of transforming into a mutt, horrified by the start of the transformation on his own arm. Jon Pertwee and Katie Manning are fantastic as the Third Doctor and Joe Grant. I always love their chemistry, with the Doctor being a father figure to Joe. Paul Whitson-Jones plays the Marshal of Solos, military representative of the Earth Empire to Solos in the 30th century. He does a great job playing a villain. Apparently the character is given some backstory in the novelization. He is said to have joined Skybase 1 as a security guard and worked his way up the ranks, which is interesting. Paul previously played Edwards in The Smugglers. Garrick Hagan plays Kai, a Solonian leader who greatly desired independence from the overlords who ruled his people. I like him, he's canny. Garrick later played Abraham in A Town Called Mercy. Christopher Cole and Rick James played Stubbs and Cotton in Aid to the Marshal of Solos. I really like those guys, especially Cotton. Christopher previously played Phipps in The Seeds of Death. Originally Colin Baker was going to play Cotton, but of course Christopher Barry decided to cast Rick, which I'm glad he did because he's absolutely phenomenal. John Hollis plays Professor Sondergaard, an Earth Empire scientist who was forced by the Marshal to flee to Solos, where he studied the Solonians, trying to find a cure for their mutations. I really like that guy as well. And of course, John Hollis was best known as Lobot in Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back, which is cool. James Mellor plays Varon, a Solonian leader who cooperated with the Overlords, angering other Solonians, including Kai. He's brilliant. James previously played Sean Flanagan in The Wheel in Space. The Solonians are a race with several different forms from the planet Solos. The insectoid Solonians are known as Mutts to the human overlords, are the immediate forms active during the start of the summer on Salos, which I thought they're interesting. A mutant costume was cosmetically altered and reused to represent a generic insectoid alien for the opening scenes of The Brains of Morbius. The novelization of the serial said the creature belongs to an entirely different species. Despite this, the Doctor does call a creature in The Brain of Morbius a mutt like the insectoid Solonians were called, and acts like he recognizes the creature. Oika also mentions that the last ship to arrive on Karn before the Doctor was a cruiser of the Mutts. In the DVD commentary, Christopher Barry refers to the species as a mutt. George Pavata plays Jaeger, a scientist and one of the greatest minds of the Earth Empire in the 30th century. He does a great job too. George previously played Alexander Danes in The Enemy of the World, and later played Castellan, Spandrel in The Deadly Assassin, Peter Howell, not the music composer, the actor.
It gets confusing here.
Yeah. Plays the investigator on Earth Empire officials sent to launch inquiries into death of the administrator of Solos and the handling of the colony by the Marshal. He's so good as well. Jeffrey Palmer plays administrator of Solos, the Earth Empire's civilian overseer for that planet. He's great too. Jeffrey previously played Edward Masters in Doctor Who and the Silurians, and later played Captain Hardacre in The Voyage of the Damned. The casts did a great job. There's brilliant sets and atmosphere. I thought the music by Tristram Cary is phenomenal. Ironically, this is not the only Doctor Who story called The Mutants. The first Dalek story was also entitled The Mutants by some until the broadcast of the story. Luckily, the same guy in the suit saves the Doctor, Joe, Kai, Cotton and Stubbs from the gas at the cave.
Look!
While Marshall tells his gods to keep seal the caves and return to Skybase, in the lab Professor Sondergaard explains that he studies Solonians, trying to find a cure for their mutation. So while the Doctor helps him, Joe, Kai, Cotton and Stubbs went out the relative safety to Varon's village, and I thought the Rainbow Caves is pretty cool. So Joe, Kai, Cotton and Stubb are held at gunpoint by Varon and his gang, and after teleporting to Skybase, Marshall and his guards have got them. But as the rocket launch fires, it hit the wall and tears a hole. Varon is sucked through in space, and it was an intense cliffhanger where everyone else are getting blown into the vacuum. Luckily, Stubb and Cotton got Joe and Kai out, but they're captured by the Marshal, so they tied up on the chair. Stubb and Cotton are accused of treason, and Kai is accused of conspiracy, sabotage and terrorism. But he also said to Joe, "Such a pity." Meanwhile, the Doctor and Sondergaard find the bombardment waning, but the damage is done. The planet life is already contaminated by the ionization crystals. Sondergaard is too unwell to keep going, but he insists the Doctor to go to the Skybase to solve the mystery of the Green Stone. So the Doctor, after knocking Marshall's guard out, he goes back to the base and about to set Joe, Kai, Stubb and Cotton free with his sonic screwdriver. But Marshall came in and told the Doctor to use a key. However, he sprung the trap and blackmails the Doctor into cooperating. The Doctor outlines his plans to Jaeger, uses the transmat's macrophaser to effect particle reversal in swaths across Solos, which obviously necessitates shutdown of the transmat system. So after Joe managed to yank the gun out of a guard and set everyone free, Joe and Cotton contacted the investigator while Stubbs keeps the guards and Marshall out. It's such a sad scene that Stubbs is killed off. Meanwhile, the Doctor and Jaeger began sweeping their particle reversal beam across the planet. It undergoes the damage of the rocket, Sondergaard has returned to the cave, almost captured by a guard and saved by the Mutt. After the battle and chasing happens, the guards took Cotton and Kai away. Joe is taken by the Marshal to the Doctor and threatened Joe if the Doctor does not terraform the planet further. Just then, the investigator's ship came to the base. Joe, Cotton and Kai are kept as hostages. To ensure the Doctor does not expose them to the investigator, Cotton finds out that the Marshal has ordered them held in the Thesium storage chamber, a chamber that will be flooded with radioactivity as soon as the investigator ship refuels. An intense cliffhanger where the ship slowly moves to the dock. The investigator arrives and quickly stops all troops loyal to the Marshal and begins his inquiry. Joe, Kai and Cotton climb in, hoping to escape the radiation in the ship. They make their way to the inquiry. Joe is safe and the Doctor speaks freely and says the Marshal is committing genocide.
And that man, with the most brutal and callous series of crimes against a defenseless people it's ever been my misfortune to encounter.
Meanwhile, Sondergaard is on board the base with the Mutts. The investigator wants the Doctor to show proof on his claims about the Solonian mutation. The Marshal grabs a blaster and guns down the terrified Mutt. The violence persuades the investigator to reinstate the Marshal's command. Kai was ill with radiation and he completes his mutation. He becomes a transcendent life form as Sondergaard gave him the stone. The Doctor continues to work, being watched by Jaeger and the Marshal, but uses the distraction of the investigator bursting in to switch a pair of wires in the particle reversal device. The investigator has become the Marshal's prisoner. The Marshal intends to transform Solace into a new Earth and make the investigator's crew his first batch of settlers. The Doctor mentioned that he said Marshal was quite mad, and I thought the effects on Kai's mutation looked pretty cool. Jaeger throws a switch on the Doctor's device only to be killed in the blast as his sabotage does its work. So Kai vaporized the Marshal and thanks the Doctor, then disappeared away. In the end, Professor Sondergaard has agreed to stay on Solos and see as many of the Solonians as possible through to the stage that Kai has already achieved, and Cotton plans to go home. While the Doctor and Joe disappeared away in the TARDIS, the Tannoy says, "Attention, attention, computer confirms door malfunction in storage area 4, investigate, please investigate, please." Great stuff in this story. What did you think of the Mutants? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.